Going Beyond is a presentation of Beyond Housing, helping entire communities become better places to live with RareGem Productions.
We're going beyond.
Today on Going Beyond.
Today, we're going to talk about what's happening in our state's capital as it relates to our local community here.
I rarely see a May in bill. Most of the time, legislation is meant for a government agency or the people of the land to follow whatever this law is trying to accomplish. So you have a shall in there. A may leaves too much room for uncertainty in the future, especially when it comes to a school district trying to put a budget together to educate children. So it's rarely seen in the bills that I've seen.
Joining me on the phone is State Representative Clem Smith. Beyond Housing is going beyond.
That and more ahead today on Going Beyond with Chris Krehmeyer. Right after this.
So I don't know. I'm raising two kids. We have two sons. One is 24, and one is 18. I've always been afraid. He was always afraid of gangs or drugs and police. And look at this. Yeah. Look what's happening. All the nightmare, all these things that's happening was in my dreams. That's what we're dealing with right now. Yeah. So you got these anxieties from just walking the streets to, if I get pulled over by this police, am I going to make it out? Am I just going to get this ticket? Or am I going to make it out of this?
If as a community we can understand that most of all the issues that we face in our lives are directly related to toxic stress and trauma, we can create a place where people understand that there are reasons behind behaviors. These aren't just random acts of violence, and things aren't just happening out of the blue. There are reasons behind all of that. We need to thrive, be alive and well. Join this movement at aliveandwellstl.com.
RareGem Productions proudly presenting the positive.
We're going beyond. Welcome to this edition of Going Beyond. I'm your host, Chris Krehmeyer, President and CEO of Beyond Housing. Today, we're going to talk about what's happening in our state's capital as it relates to our local community here. Joining me on the phone is State Representative Clem Smith. Mr. Smith, thanks for being on the show.
Thank you for the invite.
Could you tell folks exactly where your district is? And as a quick reminder, this is not your full-time job. You actually do something else for a living and support and serve your community in this fashion.
Yes, I do. I'm also an aircraft mechanic for the Boeing company. But I have the privilege of representing the 85th District, which is all in St. Louis County. It is comprised of all or 25 different municipalities. So the rough border is south of Interstate 70. North of St. Charles Rock Road. The city of St. Louis is my eastern border, and Woodson Road is the western border. So I've got a piece of Overland, Normandy, just a lot of different municipalities that are in there, Pine Line, Velda Village Hills, pieces of Veneta Park. So there's all a part of 25 different cities.
All right, fantastic. And clearly you're a longtime friend of the 24-1 initiative, and we appreciate all the things you've done for folks in the community. Let's begin with talking about the Normandy School District. Again, it's kind of been quiet on the Normandy School District front, but there are several bills that are out there that deal with the tuition transfer fix, and that is, what does the Normandy School District, or the Riverview Garden School District for that matter, have to pay the receiving school districts if child's family decides to want them to transfer to a different school? Could you give our listeners a sense of kind of what's happening on this tuition transfer situation?
Okay, so in the House of Representatives, there's House Bill 42, which is sponsored by Representative Wood, who's not from the St. Louis area. With 42, what the title is like transfer fix. It's supposed to somehow address the transfer issue that's happening in the Normandy School District, in Riverview, and any other school district that may happen, but it falls not a little bit, quite a bit short of that. Within the bill, there's provisions about accreditation of school buildings instead of school districts. There's other components about virtual education as an option. There is some expansion of charter schools in the bill, but within the bill, there's no firm or set tuition rate, and that is what Normandy Schools Collaborative needs to set some sort of baseline, some sort of pattern so they can budget and, plan things for the future. There was an amendment that I had that I tried to add to the bill that would have capped it, the transfer rate that Normandy would have had to pay, or even Riverview would have had to pay, at $7,200. But that failed on the floor. For some reason, there's no the sponsors or the people that are pushing the bill do not want to set tuition rate set in the bill. And to me, that's baffling. So this bill actually does not that much to help the Normandy School District. It'll remain in the same condition that it's in with financial uncertainty in the future.
So the interesting thing there is for well over 2 decades, the voluntary inter-district transfer program sending kids from the city of St. Louis to county schools has had that set number of around 7,200. And that apparently has worked for all the school districts in the county for these 2 decades. But all of a sudden now in Normandy, or in this situation today, that they're not willing to accept the 7,200, which to me just doesn't make any sense. It's worked for 2 decades. No one's had a problem with it, but now all of a sudden you can't do it, particularly when it comes to you don't need $7,200. You need most likely less than that. So it seems, kind of patently unfair and unfortunate that there's not a willingness to say, how do we ensure that, yes, kids get to transfer and go to quality schools if that's what their family wants, but those kids and those 80% of the kids that wind up staying at Normandy, at Riverview, have a chance for the highest quality education as well.
Yeah, correct. It's a very interesting set of circumstances here, and I'll just kind of peel off Normandy from Riverview because Normandy was in a different financial situation where we were essentially tap dancing on bankruptcy and could have gone in the red at any point, and still to this day have not rebounded from the transfer or the legacy transfers that happened before the state board came in and, I guess, reset the district. The VIC program currently has that rate around $7,500, as you stated. But for some reason, that Normandy cannot get that same rate. Districts such as Clayton, there's districts, Kirkwood, Webster Groves, I believe, that some of the Normandy students have transferred to, that accept that VIC rate of $7,200, but now there's a push in the legislature for them not to do it. Within the bill, there is a formula, and a school district can adopt that formula if they feel like it. So it's a may. It's optional when it's written into law, and it says may instead of shall. Shall meaning that you are directed to follow this part of law. And by that option being in there, there's still that uncertainty. We're not talking about a whole lot of students here. As you said, about 80 or 85% of the students at Normandy decided to stay. So we've got a smaller percentage that are out there, but because of the rates, the district is still going bankrupt. It's $20,000 Clayton charges Normandy for a child when they accept $7,200 for the VIC rate. But that's problematic, and we'll end up in bankruptcy again if nothing changes.
So how often do you see bills that have the phrase may versus shall? Meaning, when I saw that language as well, it didn't seem like that is common language used in bills that you guys review and wind up passing on an annual basis.
I rarely see a may in a bill. Most of the time, legislation is meant for a government agency or the people of the land to follow whatever this law is trying to accomplish. So you have a shall in there. A may leaves too much room for uncertainty in the future, especially when it comes to a school district trying to put a budget together to educate children. So it's rarely seen in the bills that I've seen.
Let's pivot to another topic. The issue of municipal government reform has clearly been a hot topic in our state's capital today. Ironically, it's one that they have picked to kind of solve Ferguson, which is a little ironic, but that's a conversation for a different day. But right now, there's a lot of momentum on, in particular, Senate Bill 5, which moves to cap income from fines and fees out of the traffic court system, as well as House Bill 962, which kind of really gets at more around the good government side of the work. Could you tell a little bit about those two bills and kind of what you're thinking about those two?
Okay, with Senate Bill 5, how the bill is written now, I do not support it, and I can't agree with it. It reduces the revenue threshold from 30% on traffic fines and violations to 10%, which I don't think is enough. Actually, it's too much for a city to just take on immediately at once, especially given the layout of St. Louis County with the different municipalities. I noticed with that bill in the Senate, there was a carve-out for some rural areas, and they were capped at 20% instead of 30%. But for St. Louis County, it's still the 10%. And I was kind of baffled by why, are those residents better in some way or form or fashion than the residents in St. Louis County? And why would that, kind of just cruise through the Senate and land over in the House? I've talked to many different mayors, chair people, board members of the different municipalities that I have the fortune of representing, and I've had not one say, hey, 10% we can survive on, 10% is the way to go. From what I hear, that number was just kind of picked out of nowhere, and it kind of stuck. The bill is in the House now. I will make an attempt to boost that amount to the 20%, just like the rural areas can get, to provide some sort of certainty once again for the small political subdivisions that are in the 85th District. If I was a resident, I would be extremely concerned about the movement of Senate Bill 5, and I would be calling all of my legislators that represent the cities or wherever I live in to voice your opposition. This has the possibility of impacting cities so harshly that they may cease to exist, and none of us want that.
So one of the interesting things about this particular bill is that it also impacts a handful of affluent communities as well. Places like Town and Country that has to patrol Highway 40 and 270 interchange, again, because of their obligation to provide public safety, just like the obligation of a number of the smaller North County communities, which have been in the news a lot. There are a lot of other communities, again, who view this as a problem, as revenue decrease that will be difficult to move around in the next calendar year. The thing that I have heard, and I think you've heard the same as well, is yes, there's room for improvement in some of our communities, particularly North County communities, but to paint everybody with the same broad brush of they're all speed traps and they don't take care of their business the right way is just simply inaccurate, and it's unfortunate that folks have rushed, to look to fix something that may not necessarily be broke systemically. Clearly, there are a couple of communities across the region that can get better at policing and their court systems, but to punish everyone and, again, to potentially make cities go away with elected representative leadership, and particularly a lot of African-American representative leadership in our communities, is clearly disturbing.
You're absolutely right. I'm not here or in this interview saying it. Every city, every muni is performing everything to the letter of the law. That's not the case. But I will say the majority, 95% of the munis are. So it seems like this is a machete being used instead of a surgical knife. And that can happen. So the munis that are having issues can be carved off. There can be provisions made for those munis, but I don't think using this machete and just chopping everybody up is the way to do it. I think there was a better way of doing this, and I think if there was more communication in the beginning with the smaller munis, a better bill could have come out of it.
So, as you indicated earlier, if listeners want to have their voice be heard on either the Normandy issue on the tuition transfer fix or on the municipal government reform side, what should they do?
First, I would call my direct elected official, whether it's your state representative or your senator, and apply that pressure. See where they stand on this issue, and don't get off the phone till you get an answer. Either they're with it or they're not with it, because it's going to make a difference when the vote comes. Other than that, I would go to your board meeting, talk to your local elected official, make sure that they're communicating the message too, and make sure they're working with, if you're in the 24-1 footprint, working with leadership there and working with the municipal league to do it. Finally, I would contact the Speaker of the House, Mr. John Deal, and let him know how you're feeling about these bills. Express the feeling you get when you wake up and your city is the way you want it because you chose to live there, because you choose to pay taxes there. That feeling has to get across. Let him know that this isn't just some broad issue, that your municipality is performing correctly and does not need a law like this trying to add an additional layer of government in it.
Representative Clem Smith, as always, I appreciate your time. I appreciate your service to this community. Thanks for all you do, and thanks for being on the show.
We're going beyond.
Going Beyond is a presentation of Beyond Housing, helping entire communities become better places to live with RareGem Productions. Proudly promoting, presenting, and producing positive programming.
Neighborhood is where you live, and we want to keep it strong and vibrant. This is Chris Krehmeyer with Beyond Housing. We are going beyond.
Chris Krehmeyer, President and CEO of Beyond Housing. Located at 4156 Manchester, phone number 314-533-0600. The only organization in the St. Louis region that offers access to affordable housing. Wherever we work, our goal is to help transform people, families, and communities so that they achieve the skills, strategies, resources, and commitment to succeed for the long term. See our work at beyondhousing.org. Podcast for Going Beyond can be heard, downloaded, and shared by visiting hallelujah1600.com. Listed under the music tab. on demand. Going Beyond is another positive production of RareGem Productions.